Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled people story. I've lived in my house for over 10 years now, and it's always been a nice, quiet neighborhood. The houses aren't too close together, and folks mostly keep to themselves. That all changed when Karen moved in next door about a year ago. From the start, I could tell she was going to be trouble. The day they moved in, she was yelling and bossing around the movers, complaining about every little thing. I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt, figuring maybe she was just stressed from the move. Boy, was I wrong. It didn't take long before Karen was causing issues with all the neighbors. She would call the homeowner association to complain if anyone's lawn was half an inch too long. She petitioned to get speed bumps installed because she didn't think people drove slow enough on our street. And if anyone made any noise after 9 p.m., even on the weekends, she'd be outside hollering at them to keep it down. As annoying as all that was, I did my best to just avoid Karen and not engage with her nonsense. That became impossible after her demon spawn of a child started trespassing on my property. The first time it happened, I was working in my backyard garden when I noticed the kid climbing over my fence. He couldn't have been more than 6 or 7 years old. I walked over to see what he was doing. "Hey there, looks like you're in the wrong yard, bud. You should head on home," I said. The boy ignored me and continued stomping on my vegetable plants. When I tried to gently guide him back towards the gate, he screamed, "Get off me!" loud enough for the whole block to hear. Within seconds, Karen came barreling into my yard yelling, "Don't you dare touch my child!" She grabbed the boy and clutched him to her chest, acting like I had attacked him. "Ma'am, your son trespassed into my yard and was destroying my garden. I was simply trying to get him to leave," I explained. "How dare you accuse my sweet angel of doing anything wrong? He's just an innocent child. If you don't want people in your yard, then you should build a fence," Karen snapped. I was flabbergasted by her response. "There's already a fence which your son climbed over. You need to keep him off my property, please," I replied. "Whatever. I'm going to report you for threatening a child," Karen shouted as she stormed off with the boy in tow. I shook my head in disbelief. This woman was crazy. I hoped that would be the end of it, but sadly it was only the beginning. Over the next few weeks, the kid kept sneaking into my yard and causing trouble. He'd leave trash everywhere, throw balls, and break my windows and tear up my garden. Every time I caught him and took him back to Karen's house, she'd accuse me of harassment. One day I came home to find my prize-winning roses completely destroyed. There were petals and stems strewn all over the flower bed. The neighbor on the other side saw the boy running back to Karen's right afterwards. When I told Karen what her son had done, she claimed I was making up lies to get her in trouble with CPS. "You're lucky I don't sue you for slander. My child is an angel and wouldn't hurt a fly. Maybe you destroyed your own garden for insurance money or something. I always knew you were shifty," she yelled. I'd had enough of her insane accusations. I installed security cameras that very day. The next time her son trespassed, I had video evidence. He was digging up my plants with a stick when I went outside and confronted him. Of course, Karen came running over, but this time I stopped her tirade before she could really get going. "I've got your son on camera destroying my property again. I'm going to small claims court and sending you the bill for damages unless you start controlling him," I stated very matter-of-factly. Karen turned red with anger. "How dare you? I'm calling the police right now and having you arrested for recording my child without permission." I stood firm. "Go right ahead. The police can review the footage and see exactly what your son has been up to." At that point, Karen seemed to realize I wasn't messing around. She grabbed the boy roughly by the arm and dragged him back to the house, screaming at him the whole way. I really hoped that would be the last of our interactions, but Karen wasn't done with me yet. A few days later, I received legal documents in the mail. Karen was suing me for emotional damages caused by publicly accusing her son of trespassing. The gist was that I had recklessly caused her mental anguish by claiming her child did anything wrong without definitive proof. She was seeking $10,000 for pain and suffering. I met with a lawyer friend of mine who said her lawsuit was completely frivolous. When we showed up in court, the judge took one look at the footage of her son destroying my property and dismissed Karen's case outright. She was also warned that if her child trespassed again, she would be held responsible for any damages. Karen glared at me as we left the courtroom. I thought she might explode from rage right there in the courthouse lobby. Instead, she got right in my face and hissed, "You'll regret this. I'll make you pay." Then she stormed off. After that fiasco, Karen's behavior got even worse. She put up several security cameras pointed at my house and called the police constantly, claiming I was doing everything from dealing drugs to running an illegal casino out of my home. Every complaint was completely unfounded, of course, but it was beyond annoying having to deal with a new police wellness check every other day. I decided to start documenting everything. I wrote down times, dates, and details of all Karen's harassment, threats, and frivolous complaints. After 2 weeks, I had a sizable folder, so I contacted my lawyer about filing a restraining order. He helped me put together the request and include all the relevant details. The judge took one look at the evidence against Karen and approved a 1-year restraining order on the spot. Karen looked like her head might start spinning around when they told her she had to stay at least 100 feet away from me and my property at all times. As satisfying as it was to finally get some protection from her craziness, I knew it might not be the end of things. Sure enough, a couple weeks later, I spotted her son skulking around my backyard again. I immediately called the police to the scene. The boy tried to run off when he saw the cruiser pull up, but the officers stopped him in the street. I informed them that he was violating the terms of the restraining order against his mother. They took him home and spoke to Karen, making it abundantly clear that if her son trespassed again, she would be arrested. Ever since that day, Karen stays as far away from me and my house as possible. Sometimes I'll see her peeking through the blinds when I'm outside, but she quickly ducks away if I look over. Her son seems to have learned his lesson too, as I haven't had any more unwanted garden guests. It's such a relief to finally have some peace and quiet again, now that Karen can't harass me whenever she pleases. My property is my haven, and nobody messes with that anymore. She thought she could bully and intimidate me into letting her demon child run wild, but I refused to back down. In the end, justice prevailed, and now Karen has to keep her lunacy contained on her own side of the fence where it belongs. The next one is a pro-revenge story. So this happened in 2018 when I graduated high school. A quick overview of the Swiss school system. Normally you go to school until 9th grade. If you want to go to university later, you change to grammar high school from 8th to 12th grade. I decided to study and went to high school. Also in Switzerland, my state, canton at least, everything under 75% is a fail. We have a really strict thing going on there. There, I quickly became friends with Chelsea, my now girlfriend, and Alicia. Alicia is the kind of person that is funny if you don't have her around too much. She is always the victim. She can only talk about herself, etc. But if you spend too much time with her, you are a mess. She is also never responsible for things happening to her because she grew up in the foster care system. Whatever. So, this happened about 2 months before our finals. Now, graduating means passing the finals, obviously, but not only them. The finals are half of your eventual grade. The other half is your last report card. If I had an A in my final English exam, but a C in my last report card, my eventual grade would be a B and so on. Alicia really struggled with that because her last report card wasn't that good. She had to excel in most of the subjects to graduate. So you would think she'd write as many notes as possible and study pretty early, right? Nope. She procrastinated until 2 months before our finals while I and Chelsea studied our butts off. Now, I always was the girl who offered her notes in our class group chat in case someone was interested. This gets important later. We had a fairly long list of things we had to be able to use in maths, and I wrote notes for every single topic and kept it in a folder in my locker. Only put some of them on the group chat just when someone was asking about a certain topic. One day I went to my locker and they weren't there. I was freaking out. I spent weeks on writing them. I looked for them for an entire week and had approximately 3 panic attacks because I thought I wouldn't pass now and had to do all of it again. That's when Alicia casually told me that she took them the other day when I asked her to get a book from my locker. She actually hadn't planned to tell me at all because it's not like you'd need them anyway. You had them long enough. If you didn't make copies, it's not my fault. The blatant entitlement was enough for me to come up with a plan. A vicious plan. Not only had she stolen my notes, if I hadn't bothered her so much with it, she wouldn't have even told me she had taken them. She was only a high school friend anyway, and I knew I'd never do anything with her again once we graduated. So frankly, I didn't give a single crap about what would happen to her. Her entitled, self-centered way was enough for me to finally burst. I apologized for making drama. It's okay, you just are like that sometimes. I was about to lose it, and just continued my school day. Now Alicia kept calling me about notes, etc., even before that, especially my notes for various books. She'd chosen the same books so she didn't have to study extra. I started to give her a wrong analysis and started to fake notes. Obvious enough to figure out they were wrong if she'd think herself, but not too obvious. If she'd read the books, she'd know it's bullcrap. I did the same with our English books. And French. She already had my maths notes too. I couldn't fake those, but I could fake German, French, English, chemistry, physics, and psychology. Now, after I invested so much time in faking notes, I watched it all go down a day before graduation. We went into a pub with our teacher to watch a football game I don't even remember, and she distributed our results. I passed with a 5.38. In Switzerland, the grades are from 1. 6 is best, so about an A. And Alicia went pale. 3.21. D. She had failed all of her classes but maths and psychology. Oops. It seems she really just read my notes. She didn't read the books she was supposed to read. She didn't read our textbooks. I had to hide a grin. My girlfriend thinks to this day it was cruel, but seriously, it was a damper for her entitlement and narcissism. From what I've heard, she is currently trying to repeat the year and try again, hopefully without stealing her friend's notes. The next one is a petty revenge story. A few years ago, my college sports team was flying out for a competition. We were flying out of our own town, which has a notoriously quick and easy airport experience for those of us who know it well. When flying alone, it's generally no sweat to show up only an hour before or even less. But this is always a risk in all airports, even the small ones. Our team of 20 people showed up for our early flight 2 hours beforehand, which in my opinion is still cutting it close in a lot of cases. When we got there, we immediately saw a long line out of security, which is not normal at all for this airport. We all had to check our bags and get into line, where every once in a while an employee would walk through the line asking people to look at their tickets for TSA pre-check, which means you basically get to go straight through the security line. While we were waiting an unusually long time, we started to pick up on a lot of different people in front and behind us who are all about to miss the same flight. Some people are clearly anxious and asking the employees what's going on. Unfortunately, about 20 people behind my team and me is a Karen. Karen's flight leaves in 30 minutes, and I note the fact that she's behind us in line, which means she probably just showed up only a half an hour before her flight leaves insanity. For the next 30 minutes, Karen is pushing past people, some of them are on the same flight as her, without asking any sort of permission. Karen is also yelling loudly this whole time at any employee she sees about how they are incompetent, need to let her through, etc. She is also demanding that they need to open up the other security lanes so more people can go through faster. Obviously, TSA guidelines aren't a thing to this Karen. So finally, Karen literally pushes her way through the line to about 5 people away from where my team is waiting, and there is no way we are letting her through. This is when I decided to get a little more revenge for all those poor employees and all the other nice and respectful people waiting there. Being at the back of the line, my friend and I tell the few people in between the Karen and ourselves that they can skip ahead of our whole team, because they're also on the flight that Karen is about to miss. They go through, and finally Karen gets there expecting for us to let her through too. We told her that she was very rude to the employees, and we weren't going to let her pass. She tried to shove past us, which was hilarious. She huffed and puffed behind us and was mumbling a bunch of stuff about us the whole rest of the way through the line. So we are finally about 3 people away from where our IDs are checked. Karen has finally stopped yelling at every single possible employee that comes by because we are so close to the front. Remember when I mentioned earlier the employee who comes by to remind us to look for TSA pre-check on our boarding passes? Well, turns out. Karen was yelling over or at this guy the whole time and never got the info, and when she finally started actually listening to the people who work there, she found out she could have skipped the entire line from the very beginning of this story. Amazing. I swear some people laughed out loud when she went, "Oh, I have that." The next one is a malicious compliance story. I'm a senior construction superintendent in the DFW area. The project I'm currently on is a 13-acre site, smack in the middle of an extremely affluent area to the north of Dallas. 3 weeks ago, a city inspector that we'll call Joe came into the site office and said that they received a complaint about a sprinkler soaker line being damaged during excavation for the fire lane. He, my landscaper, and myself went to investigate, discovered where a small fitting had blown out of the line. Landscaper repaired it. I went up to knock on the door to explain to them the issue and inform them of the repair. I got no answer at the door, so I left a card and a note asking them to call me. They never did. A week later, Joe comes in and mentions that they've reached out again about the noise from equipment, which is odd because anyone with heavy equipment is currently working on the other end of the property. I again went to speak with them, got no answer at the door, and left a card again. Yesterday, in walks Joe to tell me that they're complaining about our construction fence is on their property and killing their grass. The fence is 12 up from their fence, and our specs call for it to be a minimum of 15 from the property line. So I pull up our CAD files on the survey plat, so I can make sure we have it placed exact, and realize that their wood fence is 4 onto our property. Their house is about 14 inches onto our property. During all of this, I get an email from the city asking me to place the construction fence squarely on our property line. The email is sent to me, the apparent homeowner, Joe, and my project manager. I brought the surveyors back out yesterday to pinpoint our property corners and give us some 10 offsets, reference points 10 and east of the property line for line of sight, to measure from. I knocked on the homeowner's door again and got no answer. Mind you, every time there were cars in the drive. Fast forward to this morning, my fence crew showed up and they began moving the fence onto the property line, which takes 31 inches, 2 feet 7 inches of their driveway, and 18 and of the road where it ends at the property, was previously a cul-de-sac. The client finally reached out, or more accurately, came to the site office in a huff. I explained the issue, showed him the plat, and he left with some unkind words flowing from him, like diesel exhaust on a steep incline. I put a pause on the fence relocation, just to soothe the wound. My PM called him, I called the city right-of-way, row engineer, and our client. We set up a meeting that just ended. He claimed that our plat was wrong. The engineer and everyone else disagreed. The back and forth went on long enough for the client, who is an extremely laid-back and quiet gentleman, to finally speak up and basically say, "We're just going to go ahead and sell you the property you've stolen, at current market value plus 10%. In this area, that's not cheap. Nah. If that's not acceptable, we'll just have you move your fence, cut out your driveway, and use the east side of your home for advertisement. Or you can back off, let these guys work, and we'll give you lifetime use of the area you currently occupy, so long as there's no more hassling of any kind." The guy asked me if we'd move the fence back out, and I told him no. I agreed to take it off his driveway, but the street and green space belonged to us. We only did what he asked us to do. The engineer who asked me to move it agreed. So, there it is. The story again, the fallout, and conclusion. The next one is an entitled People Story. This happened a few months ago. I was coming out of Target mid-morning on a weekday. I noticed 2 adult women standing by the passenger side of their vehicle, a large SUV. The SUV was parked in the very first spot in the row, but the row was off to the side of the entrance. There were 2 spaces between their vehicle and mine. The cart return was 2 spaces over to the right of my vehicle, on the other side of my vehicle from the SUV. One of the women, the younger one, was putting a toddler in a car seat. The older one was standing there talking to the younger one. As I'm walking up to my vehicle, I noticed the older one push their cart to the middle of the parking spot next to her and leave it. Now, I have to admit, not putting your cart away is a pet peeve of mine. It's one of those small, low-stakes things that I think shows someone's character. Even still, I didn't say anything for a minute because I thought she might still put it away. But she didn't, and it quickly became clear they were about to leave as they were getting in the car and putting on their seatbelts. So, my part that I played is, I did say something to her. I rolled my window down, got her attention, and said, "Hi, you forgot to put your cart away." I said it in a friendly voice because I was trying to give her an out so she could be like, "Oh, I forgot," if she wanted. But that's not what she said. She said, "If it's so important to you, why don't you do it yourself?" I said, "Okay, well, if you're not going to, then I will," and turned my car off and started getting out to do it. I get out and get the cart. They call me a Karen. I said, "Sure, you leave your stuff out for other people to deal with because you can't be bothered, but I'm the Karen." As I say this, I'm pushing the cart out from between our cars to take it to the cart corral thing on the other side of my vehicle. As I come out from between the vehicles, the employee collecting the carts comes by and takes it from me on his way to the corral. I turn and walk back. At this point, all of a sudden, the older one screams, "My husband got carjacked a month ago, you ducking idiot!" Honestly, it was kind of crazy how she went from just talking crap to full-on red-faced screaming like that in just an instant. I told her that had nothing to do with returning her cart. Then they both yelled that I don't have anything better to do than hang out in parking lots. This made me laugh because, weren't we all in the parking lot? As I'm laughing, I said, "Give me a break. I'm here shopping just like you were." At this point, I start walking back to get in my vehicle. Their last shot was, "Why don't you go find a kitten to save since you're so great?" I told them I guess I'd have to since we clearly know they wouldn't be bothered. Then I called out, "Sorry you got caught being a crappy person." They flipped me off and drove away. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.